Ho ho, fla la 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 la, and welcome to day 2 of the Psychmas revision advent calendar. Hopefully you were with me for day 1 and that went well for you, and we're back for day 2. We need to tick the Christmas box. So what can we talk about today? What is your stance on opening presents one by one, like taking it in turns, versus dishing out all the presents and just sort of opening them all sort of together at the same time? Yeah? What's your view on that? I've got two young children, and so we do a bit of a mix, but generally we sort of let them try and lead it. We don't want to prolong it too much. Don't want them sort of sitting around getting upset. But when I'm sort of with wider family, we do tend to sort of take it in turns, and that is really nice. It's good to sort of see other people's reactions to things, see them happy, see what they've got. It does obviously prolong it, but I think I would go with that, taking it in turns. What do you think? Let me know in the comments. Anyway, revision. Let's crack on. Right, so here are some questions for you. You've got some attachment, you've got some psychopathology or clinical psychology, got some social influence, some approaches, and some research methods there. Pause the video, blur, you can do it as an exam question, whatever you want. I've deliberately not put marks there. Depends how much time you've got and how you want to engage with this. Yeah, it's for you, it's just to support your revision. So pause the video, give it a go, whatever you're going to do, come back and I will talk through some ideas. Okay, right, hopefully you've had a chance to do that, whether like I said, writing it up properly or you're just blurting on a whiteboard or whatever you're doing. Right, outline an explanation for attachment. So your two explanations that you need to know are the learning theory and Bowlby's evolutionary or Bowlby's monotropic theory of attachment. So learning theory, that's sort of the role of classical conditioning in sort of like the acquisition or the sort of initiation, the start of that attachment process. So talking about the role of food being an unconditioned stimulus that provokes or leads to an unconditioned response of pleasure. Now, because the parent, now normally we're talking about the mother here, but you could just say, primary caregiver, they sort of come with food. We associate them via classical conditioning. Yeah, they start as a neutral stimulus and they become a conditioned stimulus. So we get that conditioned response of pleasure, which becomes love through the process of classical conditioning. It's then sort of maintained by operant conditioning. So you might be aware that sort of, hunger is something that we are innately sort of driven to reduce. It's called drive reduction. And so, the baby cries when it's hungry. Now, when the baby does that, what happens? Well, mum or caregiver, dad, whoever it might be, comes over, feeds the baby, and that acts as positive reinforcement. Yeah. So the baby is encouraged to then cry for food and cry for the parent to come over. So that's positively reinforcing the infant's proximity-seeking behaviour. Now, on the other end of it, you've also got negative reinforcement because when parent comes over, actually, what happens is they stop the noise, they stop the crying of the infant, yeah, which is an unpleasant stimulus. No matter how much you love your children, you don't want to hear them cry all day, right? So you go over, you feed them, and you are then negatively reinforced to continue providing that care, to continue that proximity and caring behaviour. So you've got classical and operant conditioning there as part of your learning theory. Your Bowlby's monotropic theory, you've got, you might have learned slightly different terms for some of these, but a common mnemonic is sort of ask Mick or ask Mike. So if we go through A, so it's adaptive. So attachment is there for survival purposes. It's an evolved response. Yeah, if you think about back in the good old days of, the environment of evolutionary adaptation or, caveman times, then, children that didn't seek proximity, that didn't form an attachment, they wouldn't have been cared for. They wouldn't have been protected from, the threats of that day. So it's a survival strategy, right? Having an attachment. S for social releases. So that's the smiling, the crying, the things that encourage the adult to come and care for them. You've got C for critical period. So attachment has to form in those first few months or first sort of 2 years of life. You've got M for monotropy. So it's one special bond above all the other attachments. I for the internal working model, that sort of mental framework or schema for attachments and relationships that's formed via that primary bond. And then C for the idea of continuity or law of continuity. So we need to provide continuous loving care, and that attachment style tends to continue and get passed down through the generations. All right, so I've said lots there. Obviously, it was just one, so I've given you a bit of a choice there. Okay, strength of systematic desensitization. Remember, that's the one where you sort of gradually work through the hierarchy that you agree with the therapist. So one of the good things about that is that it goes at the client's own pace. So maybe it's more ethical than the alternative, like, flooding, which you just throw them in at the deep end, right? So you could talk about that slower, more gradual pace, more sort of client-led. Maybe it's more ethical. You could sort of extend that into being, well, maybe it's more likely to be effective. You're less likely to get people dropping out of it for those reasons. You might know the word attrition, yeah, so lower attrition rates. You could talk about that. How Milgram studied one factor affecting obedience? Well, there are 3 factors that you need to know, and they are uniform, location, and proximity. So we'll just go through one as an example. Location, probably one of the most popular ones to be talking about. So when you're doing this, you want to compare it to the original study. So Milgram's baseline study, remember that was at Yale University in that sort of scientific lab, 65% obedience, 65% of participants went all the way to 450 volts. Now compare that to when he moved it to that rundown office building downtown. Yeah, it looked a bit shady. What happened there was obedience dropped to 47.5%, which is a fair drop. Now, what you want to do here is it says explain. So if you can, try and sort of, almost justify why that might have happened. So if we move it to that rundown building, yeah, we said a second ago it's a bit shady, but give me some more terminology there. So what does it do? That shady sort of rundown building, it undermines the legitimacy of the authority figure. It makes the participant question the credibility of the location and therefore the authority. So they obey less. Yeah, they're questioning it. Right, a limitation of the psychodynamic approach. You might think of a few different things here. What would I say? Possibly the fact that it's unscientific, right? So a lot of these ideas are all sort of in the unconscious or certainly unobservable. And if they're unobservable, I can't test them, yeah? And if I can't test them, then it lacks falsifiability or falsification. Falsification, remember, is the scientific idea that for a theory to be sort of credible, then I have to be able to test it. I have to be able to prove it wrong. It shouldn't create like a circular argument, or it shouldn't create a situation where I can't actually collect data to prove it right or wrong, right? So this stuff is in the unconscious. It's not even that I can't observe it. It's more than that. I can't even ask participants about it because the whole point is that they don't know about it. If they've repressed things, it's in their unconscious. I can't ask them about it. So, Freud relied on things like dream analysis and word association that he would then interpret. So that doesn't meet another of the features of science. It's not objective, yeah? It's based on subjective interpretation. So I think that's probably what I would go for as a main limitation, that lack of scientific credibility. And what you want to do there, as I've just done, is try and include those sort of features of science, yeah? Okay, distinguish between null and experimental hypotheses. So your null hypothesis is hypothesis generally, remember, is like a clear sort of testable statement about the possible outcome of the study, right? So your null hypothesis is the idea that you're going to find nothing, basically. That's what we're doing the experiment to sort of prove wrong, right? It's your starting point. So if you're doing an experiment, it would be, group, obviously you'd actually say what the variables are, but generically it would be something like group 1 will perform no differently than group 2, or there will be no difference in whatever the DV is between group 1 and group 2, yeah? Nothing's going to happen. And then you test that against the experimental or the alternative hypothesis. And that would be, for example, group 1 will perform better or get a higher score, whatever it is, than group 2. So there will be a difference between them. Yeah, so that's your null versus your experimental. It's sort of nothing's going to happen. There's going to be no difference or no correlation versus there will be a difference or there will be a correlation. Okay. All right. Hopefully that went okay for you. Right, there we go. That brings us to the end of day 2. Hope that went well for you. Let me know in the comments. Let me know your stance on present opening as well. Please do consider supporting the channel. You've got the buttons to smash below. You've got links in the description. Have a great day, and I will see you hopefully for day 3. See you tomorrow. Bish bash bosh.